Heyman is no longer the Executive Director of Raw. This news broke late last night when WWE put out a statement and said that both Raw and SmackDown teams are going to be consolidated. That means pushed together. Paul Heyman is out the door, and now it's going to be overseen by Bruce Pritchard, who obviously before this point was just looking at SmackDown. As for Heyman, he will continue on in his role as an on-screen performer, or an in-ring performer, as WWE said, and we will talk about that later. But when it comes to trying to get people pushed or pitching storylines, that's that. It's dead, it's over. And of course, the question is, why? Here's why. I think I just concussed myself. The most immediate reason, of course, is the ratings, a touchy subject within WWE at the moment. Over the last few weeks and months, both Raw and SmackDown have posted some of the worst numbers ever, and you have to imagine that's freaking everybody out. A lot of blame has to go to the current situation, and for example, I still have friends getting in touch with me saying, Miller, I can't watch wrestling when there's no fans in attendance, and I totally get it, but clearly that excuse is no longer valid. Mostly, I would assume, because you now have stockholders going, excuse me, Mr. Vincent McMahon, what the hell is going on? And as we know, when it comes to a business, when it comes to an industry, the stockholders will always be the number one priority. I know it don't sound great, but it's true. And of course, it all does come down to the man I just mentioned, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. All the rumors and the allegations state that he's been much happier with SmackDown than he has been Raw for some time, and he's been pushing Paul Heyman to try and up his game. And think how difficult that must be for the advocate, because obviously you want to come up with your own concepts, you want to throw your own creative in there, but you also have to realize, well, there's no point pitching everything to Vince, because I know what he does like and what he doesn't like. So you have to kind of walk down this tightrope, look at that weird thing. You have to walk down this tightrope of trying to appease this one master while also showing, hey, look, I can come up with good stuff. It must be really tricky. It's also not fun at all. It's like a kid on a climbing frame and someone just runs over and pushes them off. Nobody wants that. It all comes down to a change in mentality too. Much like the XFL, Raw was seen as a long-term project. So we're going to take this guy and we're going to build him up into a star, and we're going to take this storyline and we're going to let it breathe. And even Paul Heyman has been on the record saying, well, I think that will probably take around 18 months. But when the world stopped turning, McMahon decided that we didn't have enough time to wait around, and this was an emergency situation, and we need to deal with things on today, not a year and a half down the line. And that's when everything switched. On top of this, as already mentioned, Vinnie Mac thinks Bruce Pritchard's vision is more in line with his, hence why he's now been sat on top of the Christmas tree. And if you're now saying to yourself, this sounds a lot like the Eric Bischoff situation, it's because it is. Eric Bischoff had to go to try and make up for all the badness that was happening on SmackDown, and now to make up for all the badness that's happening on Raw, Paul Heyman has also gone. And really, is it that surprising? The ex-ECW and ex-WCW guy were told they're no longer required, whereas the WWE guy, who's basically been in the company for around about 42,000 years, aside from a short absence, he now back doing this thing. So you do need to get in touch in the comments below and let us know who had Heyman and Bischoff won't even last a year when their appointments were announced in June 2019, because you got it exactly right. And also, in case you're interested, there are a lot of wrestlers who apparently are astounded by this because they enjoyed working with Paul Heyman and they thought he was doing a good job. I think he was too. And there must be some worry there, because if you do go through 2020, you can find a bunch of guys that have benefited because of the man known as Paul Heyman. There's Aleister Black, there's Apollo Crews, there's Andrade. I would imagine Angel Garza didn't mind it at all. So what's going to happen to all these guys now, especially somebody like Apollo Crews? We've been talking about this all the time, but finally, it seems like WWE's using him correctly, and given that Vince McMahon is now freaking out, maybe he'll actually lose the title at Backlash, and if that does happen, I'm gonna have to rip off my ears. Don't know why, that doesn't benefit anyone, it only upsets me, but I'll just be so upset. And we all assume that Drew McIntyre will be kept in his position at the top of the card, and my word, has he earned it, but with no reaction from fans, and again, rating going downwards, maybe Vince decides he has to do something crazy, and he does call an audible. Don't think it hasn't happened before, because it has. All of this is spilled out over onto NXT too, because as soon as this had come out, there was more news that went, oh yeah, Vince McMahon also not very happy with NXT because, wait for it, 1, 2, 3, the ratings. Boy, do I hate ratings. Now, nothing has changed down there at the moment, but there is already talk that maybe we should send some people from Raw and we should send some people to SmackDown over to Wednesday nights and see if that helps. and given that it only really helped at Survivor Series, and then there was no knock-on effect, I don't know why you do this again, but I tell you this, what is it, like June the 12th, 2020? I bet the brand split is about to be killed. Also, it doubly doesn't make sense, because if you're not happy with the Raw and SmackDown audiences, and you're going to put those guys and girls onto NXT, well, that audience has already dwindled, so how can the dwindled audience jump across? Oh, it hurts my brain. Essentially though, Vince just doesn't like the fact that he's losing to AEW each and every week, and yeah, I can understand that. They are in competition. It's only a few fans who go, they're not in competition at all. Of course they are. They are two competing businesses. That's just how it works. It doesn't mean that we have to care about the competition. We can enjoy both shows, but think about the history and the legacy of Vince McMahon. Do you think he enjoys getting that fax, because he still has a fax apparently, getting that fax every week and going, oh great, my show just got whooped by All Elite Wrestling? If you listen to the Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer even said that WWE sees AEW as an embarrassment. Now that's just silly, but it's gotta just get them all enraged. Let's not be all doom and gloom here, because you can always find a silver lining, and I've just found it. I don't think Brock Lesnar is going to come back to TV anytime soon, especially when we don't have crowds and people in attendance. So maybe you can actually take Heyman and use his advocating skills to put him with another wrestler. Now I know we tried this before with the likes of Ryback and Curtis Axel and Cesaro, and that didn't go too good, but he obviously knows what he's doing. And if you find the right connection, he will be able to raise somebody up. I mean, would you really mind if Heyman was in the corner of someone like an Aleister Black or a Buddy Murphy, don't say Buddy, that's not his name, or even a Dominik Dijakovic who is about to debut on Raw? A lot of people may not know who he is, but if they see he's affiliated with Paul Heyman and does this whole, this guy's gonna be great, who's a Paul Heyman guy? Jim Ross, that wasn't Paul Heyman at all. I think it would do wonders for him. It's not like Heyman has no worth all of a sudden, and WWE must know this, because it's not like they Eric Bischoffed him completely. Eric Bischoff wasn't offered any kind of opportunity, whereas Paul Heyman again is being kept on as an in-ring performer, and yep, I'm going to talk about it. So figure out where he does fit, and don't feel like you have to wait for Mr. Suplex City to return. Use the tools at your disposal, and Heyman is definitely a tool. I don't mean that in a negative, insulting way, I mean it in a literal good way. He's not a literal, you know what I mean. And if you want more fallout, there's also rumors that said recently Raw has been an absolute mess backstage with last-minute rewrites and storylines changing here, there, and everywhere. But wasn't that the case before Paul Heyman was brought in? Isn't that the reason that Paul Heyman was brought in, to try and steady the sheep? And I actually thought he had steadied the ship for a while, so I'm going to take that one and throw it away. Clearly Vince McMahon is just in love with Raw, which I get, it's his flagship show, and he just doesn't know how to fix it. So he's stressed, and wouldn't you be stressed? This week's rating was like a 1.7, and anything below a 2.0 is always cause for concern. And we haven't been above that figure for around about 2,000 years. It sounds like this is all done and dusted too, so we will see how this affects Backlash in but a couple of days, and of course we'll see how it affects Raw on Monday night. And it's not all terrible, because SmackDown has been a pretty decent show. I mean, I think head-to-head maybe Raw's been a teeny bit better, but SmackDown has still been watchable, so maybe Bruce Pritchard could do a good job. And maybe having one team overseeing both shows actually makes sense right now, because every show is coming from the Performance Center. It's not like there's a struggle because SmackDown's in Minneapolis and Raw's in New York or something. I don't know, just find two places that are far apart from each other. It's all operating from the same location, so maybe if you do have one hive mind, things will actually improve. I don't know, you gotta try it. But yeah, that is the latest madness in 2020. Bischoff went a few months ago, now Heyman is gone. And a lot of people did say this was gonna happen, and if you did, you get a round of applause. Did we really achieve anything with these two? Or was it maybe a marketing ploy to once again try and up those stock numbers? A little cynical part of me would say, yes. Right, now let's get to this statement that WWE put out when they said that Paul Heyman will now focus on his role as an in-ring performer. I can only assume this means he will now become an active wrestler. So one, I would like to know what his moonset is. I haven't seen him hit a 450 or a moonsault for a while, so I'm going to go on the internet and moan about him, because that's what I expect from all my workers. And two, I would like to know what his first feud is going to be. And the answer is obvious. Roman Reigns obviously has been away. He will make his big return. And I think we should build to Roman Reigns versus Paul Heyman in a Hell in a Cell Deathfire Inferno match at WrestleMania 37. If I don't get this, I will feel affronted, and I will feel assaulted, and I will feel like WWE doesn't cater for my needs. Heyman, Reigns, you've got about 8, 9, 10 months to sort it out. I will sit and stand here patiently. Don't let me down, WWE. Don't you let me down. down. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you think about all of this situation. And it is, man, so try and keep it civil, try and keep it nice. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to What Culture Wrestling. Then head over to whatculture.com, read yourself some articles, follow What Culture on Twitter to stay up to date with this stuff at What Culture WWE, and watch more videos here at What Culture Wrestling. My name is Simon from What Culture. Thank you very much for joining me. We will see what happens at Backlash. I'm terrified now that Apollo Crews is going to lose his championship and that Drew McIntyre will too. Not the end of the world. Again, Bobby Lashley as champ is not bad, but I just don't think that was the plan. And I think the last thing we should be doing right now is taking the rug and dragging it out behind anybody's feet. We need stability, and we had stability, and now we're just back to the madness. What the hell is 2020? It never ends.